What if the biggest red flags in a relationship were not actions, but words? Most men wait until betrayal, manipulation, or emotional damage becomes obvious before they realize something was wrong. But female psychology often reveals itself long before that, through subtle phrases, emotional tests, and hidden meanings behind what she says. A woman can smile at you, show affection, and still quietly reveal that she is emotionally unsafe for your future. The problem is that most men ignore the warning signs because attraction blinds logic. And that is exactly why this conversation matters. In today's video, we're breaking down 4 specific things a woman might say that should make you seriously reconsider the relationship. This is not about hating women. This is about understanding behavior, emotional patterns, and protecting your peace before it is too late. Because sometimes a single sentence can tell you everything about her mindset, emotional maturity, and future intentions. Let's begin with the first statement. At first, this sounds harmless. You may even think it makes her sound exciting, adventurous, or fun. Many men hear this and assume she simply enjoys stimulation and excitement in life. But psychologically, this phrase can hide something deeper. A woman who constantly needs excitement often struggles with emotional stability. She may confuse peace with boredom. She may associate healthy consistency with emotional emptiness. And in relationships, that becomes dangerous. Why? Because long-term love is not built on constant emotional fireworks. Real relationships eventually become calm, stable, predictable, safe. But if a woman is addicted to emotional chaos, she may unconsciously create problems just to feel stimulated again. She may start arguments for no reason, flirt with attention from other men, disappear emotionally, or constantly seek validation outside the relationship. Some women do not want love, they want emotional entertainment. And the moment comfort replaces excitement, they begin searching for a new emotional high. Female psychology explains this clearly. People who chase constant emotional stimulation often fear emotional depth. Stability forces them to face themselves, and many are uncomfortable with silence, peace, and consistency. Now, does this mean every adventurous woman is a red flag? Of course not. But pay attention to the pattern. Does she constantly complain that relationships become boring? Does she always talk about toxic exes but secretly miss the drama? Does she seem addicted to uncertainty, attention, and emotional ups and downs? Because if she does, eventually you may become just another chapter in the cycle. At first, she will call you different. Then she will call you predictable. Then she will emotionally disconnect while blaming you for changing. This is why emotionally intelligent men listen carefully to how women describe their past relationships and emotional needs. Words reveal mindset, and mindset predicts behavior. A woman who cannot appreciate peace will eventually destroy it. That is why you must never ignore this phrase when you hear it repeatedly. I get bored easily. Sometimes it is not a personality trait. Sometimes it is a warning. This sentence sounds painfully honest, and that is exactly what makes it dangerous. Many men hear a woman say this and think, she just hasn't met the right guy yet. So they immediately try to become the exception. They work harder, love harder, give more attention, more loyalty, more patience. But sometimes the issue is not the men she dated. Sometimes the issue is her relationship with satisfaction itself. Female psychology teaches us something important. People who constantly search for happiness through other people almost never find lasting fulfillment. Why? Because emotional emptiness cannot be permanently filled by romance. A woman who says she has never been happy with any man is quietly revealing a pattern, and patterns matter more than promises. Think about it logically. If every relationship ended with the same dissatisfaction, if every ex was emotionally unavailable, boring, toxic, or not enough, eventually you must ask a serious question. What is the common denominator? Emotionally mature women take accountability for their relationship patterns. They reflect, they grow, they recognize their own flaws and emotional blind spots. But emotionally unstable women often do the opposite. They rewrite history. Every breakup becomes someone else's fault. Every failed relationship becomes proof that men are the problem, and every new man becomes another emotional experiment. This creates a dangerous cycle for the man who enters her life believing he can save her. At first, she idealizes you. She makes you feel special, different, chosen. She says things like, "You understand me better than anyone. I've never felt this way before. You're not like other men." But eventually reality appears, and once the emotional excitement fades, the dissatisfaction returns. Not because you failed, but because no man can permanently satisfy someone who is internally restless. This is one of the biggest mistakes men make. They try to heal women who are addicted to emotional dissatisfaction. They think more love will fix unresolved trauma. More patience will create gratitude. More effort will finally make her happy. But you cannot build peace with someone who is emotionally committed to chaos. A healthy woman values stability, communication, and emotional security. An unhealthy woman constantly searches for a feeling that no relationship can permanently maintain, endless emotional intensity. And when reality becomes normal again, she starts feeling unhappy once more. That is why smart men pay attention when a woman repeatedly says, "I've never been truly happy with one man." Because sometimes it is not honesty. Sometimes it is a confession that no relationship will ever be enough for her emotionally. And if you ignore that warning, you may spend years trying to prove your worth to someone who was never capable of appreciating it in the first place. If you ever hear a woman say this early in dating, don't ignore it. Because this sentence is not just about her past relationships, it's a window into how she processes conflict, responsibility, and emotional history. On the surface, it sounds like she has been unlucky in love. Maybe she had bad experiences. Maybe she was hurt. Maybe she really did meet the wrong people. But psychology teaches us something important. When every past partner is labeled as crazy or toxic, the story is usually incomplete. Healthy emotional maturity includes the ability to see nuance. Not every breakup is black and white. Not every ex is a villain. Not every failure is one-sided. But when a woman repeatedly describes all her exes as unstable, controlling, or abusive without any personal reflection, it often reveals a pattern of external blame. This doesn't mean her experiences were fake or invalid. It means her interpretation of those experiences may be one-sided. And that matters in relationships, because how a person talks about their past is usually how they will eventually talk about you. At first, she may place you in the different category. You're not like them. You're so understanding. You actually listen. This creates emotional attachment quickly. But over time, when conflict naturally appears in your relationship, as it does in every real relationship, the same labeling pattern can return. Small disagreements may become, "You don't understand me." Normal boundaries may become, "You're controlling." Simple misunderstandings may escalate into emotional overreaction. Why? Because unresolved emotional patterns repeat. Female psychology, like human psychology in general, tends to recycle familiar emotional frameworks unless consciously healed. A woman who has not processed her past properly may carry emotional residue into every new relationship. So instead of seeing you as a new partner, she may unconsciously compare you to a distorted memory of her exes or project past pain onto current situations. And that is where things become unstable. A strong relationship requires emotional fairness. Both partners must be able to say, "Yes, I was hurt, but I also understand my role in what happened." If that balance is missing, then emotional responsibility is missing too. This is why experienced men pay close attention when they hear this phrase early: "All my exes were crazy." Because sometimes it's not a warning about them. Sometimes it's a preview of how future conflicts will be interpreted. And if every man in her past was the problem, you need to ask yourself a deeper question. What happens when you eventually become part of that same story? This one sounds powerful at first: independent, strong, self-sufficient. And yes, independence is healthy. Every mature person should be able to stand on their own emotionally and financially. But there is a big difference between healthy independence and emotional isolation disguised as pride. When a woman repeatedly says, I don't need anyone, I don't need a man, I can do everything alone, it can mean two very different things depending on context and emotional depth. In healthy psychology, this statement comes with balance. A secure woman will say something like, I am independent, but I also value partnership. I can live alone, but I prefer building something with someone. But when the statement becomes extreme, repeated, and emotionally defensive, it often signals something deeper: emotional walls. Because relationships are not built on necessity, but they are built on mutual emotional need and interdependence. No healthy relationship survives when one person completely rejects the idea of needing anyone. Why? Because I don't need anyone can sometimes translate into I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't trust men emotionally. I expect disappointment, so I avoid attachment. I will leave before I can be hurt. This is not strength. This is emotional protection. And here's the problem for men. You cannot build emotional intimacy with someone who refuses to emotionally need you at any level. She may still date you. She may still enjoy your company. She may still show affection. But when conflict arises, or when emotional depth is required, she will retreat behind independence. Instead of working through issues, she may detach emotionally and remind you, I'm fine on my own. That creates instability in the relationship because it removes emotional accountability. Every disagreement becomes easier to escape rather than resolve. Female psychology shows that attachment styles play a huge role here. People with avoidant tendencies often use independence as a shield against emotional dependency. They fear being controlled, hurt, or abandoned, so they convince themselves they don't need anyone at all. But real love requires openness, not dependence, but willingness to connect deeply. So when a woman constantly emphasizes that she doesn't need anyone, the key question is not whether she is strong, but whether she is emotionally available for partnership. Because strength without openness becomes distance, and distance in a relationship eventually becomes emotional disconnection. That is why this phrase matters. I don't need anyone is not always a red flag, but when it replaces vulnerability completely, it often means she has already built emotional exits before the relationship has even started. Honesty is one of the most attractive traits in a relationship, but there is a thin line between honesty and emotional weaponization. When a woman repeatedly says, I'm just being honest, deal with it, it may sound confident, direct, and real. But in relationship psychology, the delivery of truth matters just as much as the truth itself. Because real emotional maturity is not just about saying what you feel, it's about saying it in a way that builds understanding, not damage. Now let's understand what this phrase can sometimes hide. At its best, it means, I value truth over pretending. I am direct and I don't sugarcoat things. But at its worst, it becomes a shield for emotional irresponsibility. It can be used to justify harsh criticism without empathy, disrespectful communication, emotional aggression disguised as truth, lack of accountability for how words affect the partner. In female psychology and human psychology in general, communication style reveals emotional intelligence. A mature woman will say, This is how I feel, and I want us to understand each other. An emotionally immature pattern sounds more like, This is who I am, take it or leave it. The problem is not confidence. The problem is rigidity, because relationships require adjustment, not stubbornness. When I'm just being honest becomes a repeated defense mechanism, it can shut down healthy emotional dialogue. It turns every conflict into a power statement instead of a resolution process. And in long term relationships, that becomes exhausting. A man may start feeling like he cannot express concerns without being dismissed. Every disagreement turns into a personality attack. Emotional safety is replaced with emotional tension. Over time, this creates emotional withdrawal. Not because love is missing, but because communication becomes unsafe. And here is the deeper psychological layer. Sometimes this phrase is used to avoid self reflection. Instead of asking, "Was I too harsh?" I should have said that differently. I understand how that affected him. It becomes, "I was just being honest." No reflection, no adjustment, no emotional growth. That is where relationships start to break down, not because of truth, but because of the inability to handle truth with care. So, what should you take from this? Honesty is essential, but emotional intelligence is what makes honesty valuable instead of destructive. A healthy partner doesn't just speak the truth, she communicates it with awareness of impact. Because love is not just about saying what is real, it is about protecting the connection while still being real. And if "I'm just being honest, deal with it" becomes a pattern instead of an exception, it often signals that emotional balance in communication is missing. And without that balance, even strong attraction eventually turns into emotional distance. In relationships, words are never just words, they are signals. And when you learn to understand those signals early, you don't just avoid pain, you protect your peace before it gets taken away.